Well, good morning. It is 8:20 on this Thursday, December 16th. It is the Hometown Morning Show with Tori and Kyle. Special guest in studio, Dr. Rochelle Feldman. How are you doing? I haven't seen you what seems like forever. Have we even seen each other in the last year and a half?
We have in the last year and a half, but
Okay.
not much.
Not much. Okay. So, Dr. Feldman, what, as if I didn't know, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, let's see. The Greek letters. We're going to talk about Greek, as in Delta and Omicron.
Okay. What is it that we need to know? What do you want to tell our listeners about these two variants?
Okay. Well, number one, Delta is pretty nasty. Okay. And it's still the predominant strain of COVID in the United States and in Los Angeles. And we are seeing a major rise in Delta over the last few weeks since Thanksgiving.
And I'm assuming it's a bunch of different reasons. And by the way, we are talking to Rochelle Feldman from Prima Pediatrics, which is always a mouthful for me.
Right.
Tongue twister. I'm assuming a bunch of different factors. Thanksgiving gatherings.
Yes.
Non-vaxxed people.
Yes.
Stuff like that. So how do we navigate through the rest of the holidays this year?
We don't do it. I know you missed it last year. Well, here's the deal. Number one, kids are back to school. So suddenly, at least in my practice, we're seeing all the respiratory illnesses again for the first time. Last year, we had practically nothing, comparatively speaking, because nobody was in school. Now, we're inundated. I'm seeing all the old stuff we used to see and COVID. So the issue becomes, number one, it's flu season. So is it flu or is it COVID? Well, I will give you my personal experience. This past summer, we were lucky enough to have my daughter and son-in-law and their 7 children come from Israel to visit. They managed to get in and back out before anything locked down again. They arrived on a Wednesday morning. On Tuesday morning, I get a call. That's the day before, from my daughter-in-law that her brother has all the symptoms but won't get tested because he has a 3-year-old that's in a special needs nursery, and he's afraid if he's positive, they'll throw him out and he won't be able to get him back in. So she's livid because the reason my daughter came in with her whole family is because my daughter-in-law's daughter was having her bat mitzvah, which had been postponed from the previous year. Okay, fine. So they come in on Wednesday morning. Nobody sees anybody. Thursday morning, I'm with her kids at the park because they had to be tested on the way in and on the way arrival, and they get tested like all the time. And I get a call from my sister-in-law. My brother finally did get tested. He's negative, and so am I. So we said, great, bring the kids over. And that afternoon is a splendid July afternoon. I have all 11 of my grandchildren in the pool. Fantastic. We're having a great time. 5 o'clock, my son comes running in. Where's my youngest? Where's Etta? I said, she's in the pool with everybody else. Get her out. I said, why? Because she's positive.
Oh, no.
She was completely asymptomatic. So everybody goes, oh, my God, it's going to screw up our vacation. Okay, we're back in quarantine. So over the entire weekend, the whole Israeli crew who's staying with me and everybody else, we're all quarantining. And over that period of time, everybody gets sick. I mean, we are sick with a significant respiratory illness.
You got sick too?
Oh, yeah. We all got sick.
Okay.
Keep in mind, at this point, I hadn't been boosted, but I'd had both my vaccines. We figure, oh, God, this is it. This is the blowing up of the whole thing. We go in Monday morning. I troop them all in this huge van. And we all drive up to the back of my office, and we get tested. We don't have COVID. We have influenza.
You didn't see that coming.
Heck no, not in July. But that was good news for us because 2 days of Tamiflu and we were all fine.
And you're all fine.
And so the bat mitzvah went off as scheduled, and the bat mitzvah's sister came out of quarantine the day before the bat mitzvah. So this is an example of how flu and COVID look identical. And
is the only way you can tell is it's just the test. You need to get tested.
That's
is
exactly
that it?
Correct.
Okay.
And then, the whole issue here is everybody says, well, if you can get COVID and you've been vaccinated, why should we vaccinate? Good question, don't you think?
Well, I already know. Listen, I have no medical license yet. It's coming in the mail, I've been told.
I'm sure.
However, I have no medical license, but just previous experience, just recent experience. I was just telling our ops manager, a friend of mine has a husband who's unvaccinated. She has been boosted. Yes, she did get COVID, we think, from the unvaccinated husband. He's down for the count. He is miserable and horrible. The blood oxygen is low. She has a little bit of a sniffle. So that's the difference.
Exactly. And more importantly, when you get vaccinated, you are going to be less sick. The degree of hospitalization and death is minimal.
Mm-hmm.
And compared to, 90% of the hospitalized and people who die have not been vaccinated.
Why are people so afraid of the vaccine? Not to get it. Is it, I've heard we don't know what's in it. It was rushed. Any of these?
Those are the main reasons. But then, of course, there's all the nonsense that comes on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to ruin your child's fertility. It has nothing to do with fertility.
I've heard that a lot.
It's a bunch of baloney.
Yeah.
There is so much junk on the internet that you really can't trust anything unless it comes from a true scientific source.
Right.
And people say, well, how can you trust the scientists? Because that's the basis of science. Science is truth, as we know it at the time. Does that mean that we're going to be continuously right all the time? Of course not. As things change, we adjust. We look at it carefully from a mathematical point of view, test our propositions, and come up with answers. That's the basis of science. That is how we've reduced cancer. That is how we have reduced childhood leukemia. That is how we save babies who are now 22 weeks instead of 28 weeks. All of these advances have come because of science.
Science.
And, if you don't trust science, then guess what? You shouldn't be using a radio or a TV, and you shouldn't be using your cell phones, and you shouldn't be doing half of the things that you're doing. You want to take an antibiotic? Well, you can't if you don't trust science.
So you're saying you can't pick and choose. It's either one or the other. Either you believe in science or you don't.
And it's not a question of belief. It's a question of fact.
Right.
There is no such thing as belief in science. It is fact. You look at the facts, you draw your conclusions, and you act accordingly.
Now, that being said, because we are running out of time, what I want to do is go over, because you are Prima Pediatrics.
Yes.
You are. That's who you are.
That's true.
So let's talk about the children very quickly before we run out of time. What is the age now that the children can get the vaccine, and do you recommend it for these young children?
The answer is 5 and up. The 5 to 11 get a much lower dose because they don't need as big a dose. They have a much more vigorous immune system. The 12 to 18 get the adult dose, and so on. This pretty much covers our school-age kids. And yes, of course I recommend it. Well, why should we put our children at risk for an unknown vaccine if we don't know that it's going to do anything and they don't get that sick to begin with? The answer is they do get that sick. We have had mountains of kids in the hospital from COVID all along, and the kids follow the adult rates the same way the adults do. Number one. Number two, the Omicron will respond to your booster. You're not going to get the best coverage, with the first 2. But your booster knocks the Omicron.
Get that boost. Dr. Rochelle Feldman from Prima Pediatrics. What's the best number to get you?
661-424-9000. And I shall tell you that beginning second week of January, Prima Pediatrics will have COVID vaccine.
Fantastic. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Don't be a stranger.
I'll try not.